Well, good evening, and thanks everybody for coming to the screening. It really means a lot. It means a lot for us to have our little Venezuelan film screen here at the Austin Film Festival, especially today in Halloween. And yeah, it's a film based on a real-life vampire, Zacarías Ortega and Ramon Perez Brenes. They both actually existed. I'm not quite sure they were related, but yeah. The film is an adaptation. It's based on a book by a Venezuelan author, and he's a history professor at the University of Zulia in Maracaibo, and he started researching this serial killers who used to drink the blood of their victims throughout the 20th century, and he decided to write this novel and connect all these stories about real life vampires and create this idea that they all may be the same person, that they all may be this one man obsessed with finding immortality through drinking human blood. So yeah, in order to write the book, the author interviewed 3 different police detectives that were in charge of the investigation back in the 70s, in charge of the case of Zacarías Ortega. And then for the book, he merged them in one single character, which is the character of Jeremias Morales. When I read the book 10 years ago, I thought it could be a fantastic film, and I bought an option back in 2013, and I started to write a script and look for the funding, and it wasn't until 2016 that we actually got to make the film.
And as you know, we are at the Writers' Festival, and one of the things that I was very interested in, especially since this was a real-life case and you use books of parts of your research, is how much of the story or elements you incorporated like from your own take, right? To make it more like film-like and whatnot, and what things you said, no, this has to be exactly as it happened, as it was written. Were the names of the actual people the real names of the people who exist in real life, or you created new characters? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah. Let me tell you something. Adapting a book, it's a huge challenge. I thought it would be easier, to be honest, because I thought, well, the idea is there, the book's there, it's an amazing book, and yeah, I don't have to create something from scratch. But the truth is, adapting a book, especially a book you love, is tremendously difficult. You have to cut a lot of stuff out, and especially this book was a book that reflected a lot on the evil nature of the human being, and I had to find out how all these reflections that the main character had could be put onto the screen without being just a boring voiceover. So I translated that into exposition, but then it was just talking heads, and I had to turn it into action. So, yeah, it was a huge challenge to turn something that worked really great in a literary format into a screen format. And I think the first draft was like over 250 pages long. I was like, well, this is not going to work. So I had to start working, cutting things out. And that didn't work either. So at some point I thought, like, I have to find the story that actually works for the screen within the book, and that's how I got to this adaptation that I think works really well without losing the essence of the book, which was really important to me, since that's what I fell in love with at the beginning.
Absolutely, and I think that's something in particular that we noticed throughout the film is that some of the more visceral images, things that you incorporate into this movie, you make it sort of like a cult, right? So there's no real, answer to whether the actual police in Venezuela figure out, is it just one person, is it a group of people? But not only it's a story about a cult, our main character ends up becoming part of this cult. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about Ernesto Navarro, I guess the leading person throughout this film, and the decision of making it an actual vampire himself.
Well, it somehow incorporates into the previous question, because that's one of the things I actually changed when adapting the book. In the book, Ernesto Navarro starts to investigate the cases, and when when Morales kills himself, he realizes that he was consumed by his obsession with this killer, and this thing that Morales says to him at the beginning of the film, which you try to stay away from horror, because if you're always digging into terrible things about the human being, you end up being consumed by them. And in the book, Navarro, when Morales kills himself, he just drops it. He learns his lesson and he just gets away from it. And nobody knows what happens to the vampire. It's if it's real or not. That's how the book ends. I wanted to make something a little bit more commercial, and I wanted to give it an ending, and I wanted it to be something that ends up in a tragedy, something really terrible, which is my main character actually embraces his dark side, and he lets this evil, this arrogance within him corrupt him. And he becomes the next vampire, and he keeps the legacy alive. So that's a decision I made as a screenwriter, and yeah, I mean the writer of the book saw the film and he thought it was amazing. So I think he wasn't bothered by that decision.
Fantastic. And a little bit under a lighter note, we are in Halloween, so I know many of you will soon be going to a party or something. Why don't you talk a little bit about creating like the physical form of a vampire? I talked to you before, and you mentioned that some of the actors look way younger, like in real life, than to the actual vampire, and there's a lot of patterns there. And there's also a lot of blood in this film, and even a little puppy drinks a lot of blood. So if anyone wants to have some blood, maybe he has some tips for you today.
Well, yeah. Creating the vampire was one of the most challenging things about the production since casting the actor, because I had to have this character, which is the same character throughout the years, but in the end it turns out to be 3 different persons. So the question was, should I get 3 different actors that look a lot alike, or should I get one actor and give him a slightly different character in each different time? And that's what I went for, and I found this guy through casting, Eduardo Gulino, who is an Argentinian living in Venezuela. So I had to change his actual accent so it didn't sound so Argentinian, because Argentinian accent is so strong. And the thing about the vampire in the book is that he looks really old, but he's not old. He's really strong and has he's really energetic and young in spirit, because that's what blood does to him. Even if his body ages, his spirit doesn't. And we had to put, every single day we shot with him, we had to put 14 different, 14 layers of latex on his face to make a lot of wrinkles and make him look older. And change him throughout the ages, so he looks different as Ramón Pérez Brenes, Zacarías Ortega, and then later on as the Southern Devil, which it's supposed to be the reporter that we see in younger. And just by coincidence, when we had the makeup and we put the glass on him, when he looks as the old reporter that turned into the vampire, he looked a lot like the actor of the play that the young character, and we were like, wow, they look a lot alike. So that was one of those happy coincidences you get in the production. You're like, well, we never planned this, but as it turned out, they looked alike a lot. So in terms of blood, well, we had to use a shitload of that. There was liters and liters of blood. Blood is fake blood that you can actually drink. It's made of sugar. It's like those things you put in a margarita.
Oh, okay.
And
the little puppy had to drink.
Yeah, and when the dog had to drink it, and we mixed it with meat soup. Okay. And but this dog hadn't tasted sugar before in his life, so he was like on a sugar rush. So that's why he looked so anxious to be drinking blood.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought the first time I saw the movie, I thought they were all the same actor. Like, it didn't matter if it's when the past and beginning, like, oh, you just used a lot of makeup. But yeah, that's so unique that you actually got 2 different actors that looked so much like each other after. after makeup. That's fantastic. So I'm gonna ask you one more question, but I just wanted to let you all know after that question, it's open to everybody. So if you want to think of something right now, that this is the best time to do so. My last question for you, it's going to be, what was your favorite scene to film, and what was your favorite scene to write?
My favorite scene to write was the scene at the church where Ortega invites the inspector Morales to talk with him and ask him to kill him, and that scene in the book is so intense, and they have like a really deep conversation about good and evil and how that is such a subjective matter. And maybe you think somebody's terribly evil, but that in that person's eyes, he's actually doing right. So I think that was my favorite scene to write. When I had to shoot it, we had this riots going outside because we shot the film in the middle of riots going on in Caracas. We had to close down the church so we could keep shooting while the National Guard was throwing like tear gas, and there was a lot of noise outside, and I was like, well, this is such an important conversation, and of course we were recording everything live, so we had to wait until everything passed and then pick the right takes where you didn't have like people screaming outside because they were being chased down by the National Guard. So I guess that's what my favorite scene to write. My favorite scene to shoot was the last scene of the film, which was the last scene I had to shoot, and I was so happy after 6 weeks of shooting. I was like, I just want to get it over with.
That's awesome. Alrighty, so is there anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question to Filmmaker? Anything at all? There you go. Yeah. What about you, sir? Or ma'am? Sorry.
Me?
Oh, there you go. Yes. Where are you, ma'am?
I was just going to ask about how you raised funding. How did you go about getting funding for your film?
So her question is funding to produce a film like this.
Well, yeah. One of the things I realized since I came to the Austin Film Festival is that it's very difficult to raise money to make a film in the States. Because unlike Europe and Venezuela, you don't have like a film fund. In Venezuela, we used to have a film fund. Now the country's, pretty much gone down the drain, so we don't have any money anymore. But I think my film was one of the last ones that went through the funding by the SENAC. And it's a fund. It's a fund that it's a private fund because it comes from contributions that the private industry makes to this fund, and every time you go to the cinema and pay for a movie ticket, a part of what you pay for goes to this fund, to this filmmaking fund in Venezuela. And you have to apply to that, and it's a complicated process because you have to have a producer attached, the script, the schedule, the budget, of course, and all the even intention letters from actors and crew. And it takes some time to get the money, but it used to work, at least up until 3 years ago. We got about 70% of the money for the film through that fund. It still was a very cheap film, and I'm not allowed how much the actual budget was because you would laugh at it. It's usually what you spend on a short film here in the US. And the rest of the money was pretty much my friends from high school. They all, they all chipped in a little bit, and that's how the film got made.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carl, for coming to AFF and for screening your movie Halloween. Thank you so much.